Let's talk about the EU AI Act. It's the world's first ever comprehensive law for artificial intelligence, and, well, if you build or deploy AI anywhere in Europe, you absolutely have to know what's in it. But this act isn't just about putting up guardrails. It's really about setting a global standard. The goal, and you can see it right there in the official text, is to encourage AI that is human-centric and trustworthy. It's all about balancing innovation with protecting people's health, safety, and rights. So you might be looking at this and thinking, okay, that's a nice mission statement, but what does this actually mean for me and the AI system I'm building? That's the big question, right? It's a complex law, for sure, but we're going to break it down into the practical things you need to know to build, deploy, and keep innovating. Here's how we're going to tackle it. First, we'll get into the core logic of the whole thing. It's 4 tiers of risk. Then we'll zoom in on those high-risk systems, because that's where the details really matter. After that, we'll talk about the new rules for general-purpose AI. Think foundation models. And finally, we'll look at how the EU plans to help innovators, and of course, the timeline for when all this kicks in.
All right, so the entire AI Act is actually built on a pretty simple and honestly intuitive idea. The more risk an AI system could pose to us, to our health, our safety, our fundamental rights, the stricter the rules are going to be. Simple as that. So the very first thing you have to do is figure out which of these 4 categories your AI system falls into. That's the critical first step because that decision determines everything that follows. Let's start at the very top with unacceptable risk. I mean, the name kind of says it all, right? These are the AI systems that the EU sees as a clear threat to people. We're not talking about regulation here. These are just flat out banned.
And we're not talking about vague guidelines. Article 5 gets really specific. It forbids things like government-run social scoring, AI designed to manipulate you and cause harm, and systems that just scrape the internet for faces to build huge databases. It even bans emotion recognition tech in places like your job or at school. Okay, moving down a level, we get to high-risk AI. Now, this is the category you really need to pay attention to because this is where most of the heavy regulation is focused. A system is high risk if it could seriously impact someone's safety or their basic rights. Below that, you've got limited risk. For things like chatbots or AI that generates deepfakes, the main rule is pretty simple. You just have to be transparent. You have to make sure people know they're talking to an AI, not a person. And finally, we have the category that honestly covers most of the AI out there. Minimal risk. Think about things like AI-powered spam filters or characters in a video game. The good news? The Act pretty much leaves these systems alone, so innovation can happen freely. All right, let's circle back and really dig into that higher risk category. This is where the rubber meets the road for a lot of developers, so it's absolutely crucial to get what's required here. So how do you know if your AI is high risk? Well, the Act gives you a pretty clear list. If you're building AI that screens resumes for a job, decides if someone gets into college, helps manage the power grid, or is used in law enforcement, chances are you're in the high-risk category. Now, if you do fall into this high-risk bucket, there's a set of core requirements you have to meet. And don't think of these as a simple checklist. They're more like interconnected pillars that have to be solid throughout your AI's entire life cycle. It all starts with managing risk and is built on a foundation of good data, clear documentation, real human oversight, and strong technical performance. Let's talk about that risk management system. This is super important. It is not something you do once, check a box, and then forget about. The Act is really clear that this has to be a continuous, ongoing process. You have to be identifying, analyzing, and reducing risks for as long as the system is in use. And that brings us to human oversight, another key concept. It's not enough to just have a person watching a screen. The system has to be designed from the ground up so that a human can actually understand what it's doing and, crucially, step in to stop, disregard, or even reverse what the AI has done. The whole point is that a human has to have the final say, always. Okay, so the Act doesn't just look at how AI is used. It also has specific rules for the huge, powerful models that are the foundation for so many apps we see today. The Act calls these general purpose AI, or GPAI models. And what does that mean exactly? Well, basically, we're talking about those big, flexible models that can do a whole bunch of different things. They're not built for just one task. They can be adapted and fine-tuned for all sorts of uses down the line. Now, for these GPI models, the rules are tiered. Think of it like this. Every GPI model provider has a baseline of transparency duties. You've got to provide technical docs, respect copyright law, and so on. But then there's another level for models with what's called systemic risk. And for them, the list of demands gets a lot longer, including things like intense model testing, mitigating risks, and reporting any serious problems.
So how on earth do they decide what has systemic risk? Well, they came up with a number, a really, really, really big number. If the total amount of computing power used to train your model goes over 10 to the 25th power floating point operations, well, your model is automatically presumed to be in that higher risk category. It's a key benchmark. Now, you might be hearing all of this and thinking it's just a mountain of rules. And it is. But the AI Act isn't only about regulation. It also creates ways to actually help developers innovate, and it gives everyone a very clear timeline for getting ready.
One of the coolest things they're doing to help is creating what are called AI regulatory sandboxes. So what is that? It's basically a safe space, a controlled environment set up by the government where you can develop and test your new AI system with direct guidance from the regulators before you ever launch it to the public. And the whole point of these sandboxes is to help you out. They're there to spark innovation, to give you legal clarity so you're not just guessing about the rules, and to help you get your product to market faster. And they're especially great for smaller companies and startups who get priority access.
Okay, let's talk deadlines. This is what you really need to know. The Act doesn't just drop on everyone all at once. It rolls out in phases. So you'll want to circle these dates. The ban on those prohibited systems, that starts in early 2025. Then the codes for the big GPI models are due mid-2025. And those helpful sandboxes have to be up and running by August 2026.
So there you have it. The EU has officially planted its flag and set the global standard for AI regulation. The big question for everyone in the field is no longer if regulation is coming, but what it looks like. And the even bigger question for you is your AI ready? Because understanding these rules is no longer optional. It's just a core part of building AI today.